Hi guys, so this time I actually can start with a story, which is cool. Today I wanted to talk about leadership because I see a lot of great leaders in our small group. So I was going to start off with talking about Moses because he didn't feel like he was adequate enough to lead. And I don't know if you guys sometimes struggle with it, but I do, where I don't feel like I'm like the right person for the job. But like he has given me such like a powerful message that I feel like you guys need to hear sometimes, but I'm never quite sure if like I'm using the right words or if I'm being heard. So the story I believe starts in Exodus 3, and that's whenever God calls Moses to lead through a burning bush, and that's kind of like a large like call to action, versus in today's world it might look like you seeing something that like reminds you of something that he wanted you to say, or him showing you like little acts of kindness that you can do that would speak volumes in other people's lives. Like it'll look different today, but in that time frame his call to action was like setting something on fire, be like, hey, what's up, home slice, you need to go free my people. And a side note is like whenever God first started speaking to Moses, he tells him to take his sandals off because this is holy ground that he's standing on. And I know we talked about this like a few years ago at a Fuse camp, and I can't remember exactly what we were talking about. But one of like the big takeaways I had was it was like symbolic of whenever Jesus washed the disciples' feet, which happened after this. So it's kind of like a foreshadowing, but he hasn't taken them off because of that, and like it's another way for us to feel even more connected to God by like standing, like actually physically like touching the holy ground. So Moses is called to free God's people from Egyptian rule. They've been slaves for thousands of years, and like God was like, okay, enough is enough. So the first thing that Moses does, instead of being like, wow, I was chosen, this is amazing, he was like, God, you got the wrong guy, like you should send someone else. And God was like, no, what, I chose you. And Moses' first excuse was saying that he's not worthy, and like I think of that is not exactly of him being humble, like, oh God, I'm not worthy to like do this for you. It's more of like him being really, really afraid of the outcomes. Like the people already don't like him for a couple of different reasons that we can go into later, but they don't really like him, so he's worried that they're not going to listen to him. He's worried that it's not going to work because he's not exactly on like a good page with the Egyptians either. And his own people don't really like him because he like kind of grew up in an Egyptian household, but he is part of God's people. So all that to say, like he was really afraid because he wasn't quite sure that he was even going to be heard, and he was worried because like he wasn't sure of how it was going to work out. So then like God kind of combats that, and then later on Moses again is like, well, I'm not a great speaker, like I have trouble with speaking, and he says that he's like slow of tongue, and he gives all these reasons why he shouldn't be the one to go. So then God, even though he already had given Moses the tools to go free the people, he gave him even more tools because he knew that Moses needed them in order to go. Like this is what it was going to take to convince him to go. So, sorry, I lost my place. Oh, and I like that God chose Moses and we were able to see this side of Moses, because I think if it was anyone different, like it wouldn't have worked out the way it did. He chose Moses, who was like cast out by his society, and he was like not a very popular person, and like he himself didn't even want to go. And God kind of taught the people and Moses, like it doesn't matter who goes, like God's will God's will prevail. And like if they had chosen a strong leader, they probably would have thought that it was the strong leader's will. that it was of that person's own power and that it wasn't coming from God. But because they chose Moses, they were looking at him, probably thinking like, this guy is the lowest, one of the lowest of the lows, and God chose him, so this has to be God. Anyways, so like God already saw through Moses' weaknesses, and he already knew that he had given him the tools, but he gave him even more so that Moses felt confident enough, like going to go like set his people free. And God has already kind of done the same for us. And I was going to talk about like the symbolism behind the extra tools that he gives Moses. So one of them was whenever he threw his staff down, it would turn into a snake. And then the second Moses like picked it up again, it would turn into a staff. And it doesn't really like say a whole bunch about that, but I see it as God kind of saying like, look, I have power over the devil, kind of. This part might sound a little far-fetched, but like he has power over death, and that he has power over evil because like the snake is symbolic of the devil in Genesis whenever he's in the garden. And then the other one is the cloak. So they don't really talk about this one a whole bunch, but like he had Moses hold out his cloak, and then he stuck his hand behind the cloak. Whenever he brought it back out, it was like covered in leprosy, which is like a disease that like a lot of people had, and it was easy to catch, and it just kind of like deteriorated your skin. And then he had Moses put his hand back inside the cloak and pull it out, and it was fine. So I see that as like God saying, hey, I have the power to heal. And then in response to Moses's excuse that he isn't a good speaker, he sent his brother, I don't remember his name, but he sent him his brother to speak for him. So whenever they went, like originally it was Moses' brother speaking, and then Moses eventually did the talking, but he didn't feel confident at first. So I feel like the message there is God saying like, it's not how the message gets there, it's not who says the message, but like it's God's will, so it's gonna happen anyways. If that makes sense, I'm not sure. Like, it doesn't matter who's giving the message, the importance is that the message gets there. And then he sent the 7 plagues, and so I kind of see that as God has a purpose behind people suffering. He has like a big message behind it, because eventually it did lead to the Egyptians setting the people free. But I mean, that was also because of a healthy fear of God. But like for the people who were set free, it's kind of telling them like, hey, like there's a purpose for suffering, because they had been suffering for like all of the years previously. So I felt like this would be a cool thing for us to go over, because for you guys, I already see you as leaders, but we're also kind of really quiet as a group overall. So I just wanted to encourage you, like at home or with your friends or at your new life in college or at church, wherever you are, I encourage you to continue to be leaders, because there are people watching you, and that sounds really creepy, but like there's people who look up to you that you might not notice that they're looking up to you now, but they're watching what you're doing and how you respond to situations, and they might not ever talk to you about it, or they might talk to you about it in like a couple of years, but what you're doing now matters a lot, and it says a lot about your character. And like I see all these different good attributes for leaders in you guys, and I would love for you guys to be able to just like go out into the world and lead people back to Jesus, and like to hear about all the different ways that you guys are able to do that, because we might all have different skill sets, but we all are like put here for the same purpose, and we can all accomplish the same goal just in our own ways that like will speak volumes. So I was gonna pray again really fast. And yeah, okay. Dear Lord, thank you for this amazing group of people. I pray that they know how important their actions are, and that they are confident in their abilities, God. I pray that they recognize the skills that they already have, and recognize that they don't need any more tools, because you've given them what they need from like since day one. I pray that they know just how incredible they are and how big of an impact they're making, even with the smallest things that they do. I pray that they continue to be confident going into this next season of life, wherever it takes them. And I pray that they're able to live boldly so that it becomes so attractive to other people that they want to know who you are as well. Amen.